The Shelton Metropolitan Park District meeting is called to order. Has anybody signed up for public comment?
No public comments.
All right. Are we ready for the consent agenda?
Yes.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussions? No, hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. At this time, we're going to recess out of our regular meeting and into a public hearing. And I'm going to turn this over to Sandy Hines for some budget information.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight we'll be doing just a short presentation that you have before you for the SMPD. First, we have a revenue public hearing. The main revenue source for the SMPD is property tax, and this is an informational briefing only about that property tax. And we'll allow time for public comment after that, but there is no action from council tonight that is necessary. As you can see, I've included some property tax history for the Metropolitan Park District. As has happened in the past, because it is a junior taxing district, the allowed rate of up to 75 cents has been prorated. And so some past years, we've been all the way down as low as 27, 28 cents. Next year for the prelim, it looks like we'll be up closer to almost 70 cents. So that is good news and a larger amount of revenue available. And then there's a slide in there just showing with the calculation of how we came to that with last year's actual levy of $485,000. And it does assume the park board approves the optional 1% that's allowed by state law, includes the addition of new construction and administrative refunds to get to a regular levy amount for next year of $493,000. So just that 69 cents. And that provides for that, and that's all we have.
That's it? All right. I'd like to, any council members have any questions or comments on it?
Looks great.
Any public testimony?
Oh, no
Hearing?
public testimony.
Hearing none, all right. I'd like to ask for a reading of the resolution number SMPD 26-1118.
Resolution number SMPD 26-1118, a resolution of the Shelton Metropolitan Park District of Shelton, Washington, increasing the ad valorem taxes for calendar year 2019.
Do we all concur to put this on the action agenda on the 20th?
Yes.
2018?
Yes.
Concur.
Yep.
All right. This time, we'll close the public hearing and return back to the regular meeting, where I'd like to just announce our next meeting is the next special SMPD meeting is on November 20th, 2018 at 5:50.
Councilmember Dorsey,
Yes?
I think we have to keep the public hearing open for a little bit longer.
Oh, did we miss something?
Well, actually, there's two separate public hearings, one on the revenue sources
Oh.
and one general on the preliminary budget.
Okay.
So we'll have to open a second public hearing.
Apologize for the
Sorry.
miscommunication on that.
You're doing a good job, Kevin. Keep it up. Just
All
fine.
right, so we'll reopen the public hearing. And it's up to you again.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, Sandy.
Another short little presentation. This one is just on the Park District's general budget. Oh, not revenue specific, but the whole thing. Again, this is informational briefing only, no council action as required at this time tonight. Beginning cash for the Park District listed at $326,000, and that's again based on estimates that we'll be reviewing again for revenues and expenditures based on this year's. The revenue listed at $485,000. That's the property tax And then expenditures are then the park district reimbursing the city for its recreation and parks activities. Of the expenditures included in that for next year are 2 one-time requests, $40,000 towards open space comp plan that hasn't been done in several years and needs to be revised. And then a $30,000 for a new public works, or sorry, not public, parks vehicle. Includes 2 one-time requests for that. And with that, that is now.
All right. Any questions?
Was the vehicle request on the previous, was on last year's budget request as well?
No.
No, it's new for
No,
this year.
we didn't request it last year because we knew the funding wasn't going to be available.
Okay, thanks.
Not that it wasn't needed.
Gotcha. Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, so now we can close out of the
Close
regular
the second one, yeah.
public hearing and
Unless
back
there's
to
any
the-
public comment.
Unless there's any public comment.
Okay.
No public.
Back to the regular meeting, which I will announce again.
2 minutes.
The next Shelton Metropolitan Parks Department meeting is on November 20th at 2018 at 5:50 PM.
All right.
We're adjourned.
We're to call our regular meeting of the Shelton City Council to order for November 6, 2018. Everyone, please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Perfect.
We're going to start with asking the council if there's any changes to the agenda, including the consent agenda. Any changes tonight?
There was a conversation about tab number 19 this week, and I don't know if the city manager had talked to you at all about just some concerns about that issue. I don't know what we do at this point. It's on the action agenda, but there's some figures that I'm not quite sure I was happy with, and I don't remember seeing them, so I'm just want to follow protocol on that, so.
What tab was that, Gary?
That would be
Tab 9.
tab number
nine.
9.
Okay.
I don't have tabs.
So-
What's the topic?
The right of way.
Agenda 4,
Thank
item
you.
4.
Okay. Ordinance 1930, 1018.
Oh, no, sorry.
Yes, the city manager and I talked, and
Action.
we pretty much agreed to keep it on the agenda, and we'll have our discussion when that agenda item comes up.
And just vote then, okay, sounds
Okay.
good.
All right,
Yes, you're right.
so any other changes to the agenda? Okay, we'll accept the agenda as presented. Now's the time for general public comment, and we will have public comment on both the business and action items separately, and we'll have time for public comment during the formal public meeting, or public hearing, excuse me. But for general public comment, now's the time. You need to fill out a card and hand it to our clerk. Donna, do we have anyone sign up for public comment?
We do. Mayor, how much time are you allotting?
3 minutes?
Okay. First on the list is Tom Davis.
Council reports first.
Oh,
Oh.
sorry. We'll get public comment first.
Public comment first?
First, is that okay?
Okay.
I apologize to council. And state your name and whether you're a city resident, please.
Good evening. My name is Tom Davis. I am not a city resident. I am a Mason County resident, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak here. I'm not, as you know, I'm involved in the tiny homes project with veterans, but I'm not here to speak about that tonight. I'm here to speak about something entirely different because it's concerning me. And one of the things that I spoke at the commissioner meeting today. And as you know, the commissioners, the county commissioners, are purchasing the old Olson property. It's about 20,000, a little over 20,000 square foot of retail space and about 28,000 square foot parking area. And they're actually proposing to make it into courthouses. I can't think of a worse thing to do with that particular property, because on one side of the south side of Railroad Avenue, you're going to have a long-term mental health facility, chemical dependency facility that is going to service people not necessarily from the county, And on the other side of Railroad Avenue, you're going to have people shuffling down from the jail in chains. And in between, you're going to have your business corridor. This is not a good idea. This is a very, very bad idea. When I first moved here, for the first 2 years, I went to every single council meeting in the city, in the county, and in the port. And the one thing I learned about that is that the 3 major municipalities in Mason County do not work together, do not even consider each other, either in their public policy or their economic decisions. We're in deep problems here in Shelton, the city of Shelton, and I had pretty well, and I'll admit it to you, wrote off the city of Shelton until we had a 7-person committee. Everything changed for me. I saw hope for the first time. But you're going to have to fight, because the county is a bigger municipality. They did not share with you when you wanted to do the transportation benefit district. They did not share with you when you wanted to do the public safety. All that would have worked out to the benefit of the county and the city much, much better than having the city do it all alone. I hate, we have enough divisiveness in this world, but at the same time, if you don't stand up for yourself, you're going to be eaten around here. So I mean, I stood up for the city, even though I'm not your spokesperson during the meeting, and I will continue to do so. But it would be nice if some folks in the city also stood up and said, this is really not a good idea. Everybody thinks it's a done deal, but this property, the Olson property, is in the city. You have your own city police department, your own city fire department, your own city permit department. You've got leverage. You've got skin in this game. And if you lose this potential anchor retail property, you lose a lot, because they will probably never, ever again build a facility in downtown Shelton that is going to be over 20,000 square feet. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Turn the volume on.
And we have Pam Stevens.
Hi, my name is Pam Stevens. I do live within the city limits. I live in Springfield Park off of Brockdale, and I wanted to talk about the tiny houses project. It's come to my attention that it looks like the city is looking at the lot across the street from Christmas Village, and I have some concerns with that location. That piece of property is really in a prime location. It's got the college kitty corner. It has the hospital with the expansion going on. It's next to our schools. It's a block away from where the Y is going in. So it's a piece of property that could really bring commerce into the city. It could bring, if it's developed, could really cause Shelton to grow. I've lived in Shelton since 1999. I believe in affordable housing options. I've benefited from affordable housing options. I built my home with a self-help housing program through Kitsap County Consolidated Housing Authority in Springfield Park, so certainly I think that those are important programs. However, Shelton hasn't grown hardly at all since I've lived here. I've lived here almost 20 years, and it's been really stagnant, and I feel like it's kind of had an upswing. We've been making progress, and I feel really positive. I think the community feels positive. And there's not a whole lot of land in those areas that are not left to be developed, and I'm just concerned with the value of the property and the location of the property being used in such a way that doesn't cause the city to grow and flourish, but rather is a location that will draw on our resources. That's my first concern. My second concern is that location is directly on the walking path for every child in my neighborhood, and we have 64 homes. My children participate in after-school activities. They walk to the middle school to play basketball. My sons walk to the high school to play football. So you have children in my entire neighborhood who walk that route all year long. I'm concerned with that. I know that obviously we live, homeless are among us, they're around us. However, you're putting a group of concentrated individuals who have other challenges. One of the statistics, this is a .gov statistic, I'm happy to email it to you. 92% of homeless veterans are men and suffer from at least one mental illness, and as well as alcohol or drug abuse issues. This is a very troubled population of our community. So putting them in a concentrated area along the walking route is concerning to me. So between the value of the property and using it in such a way, and the fact that it's so close to our schools and along the walking route concerns me.
Thank you, Pam.
No more public.
Okay, now, and I apologize to council for getting out of order. So now we will have council reports, starting with Councilmember Dorsey, please.
All right. Well, I got a little something different tonight than I've had in the past. I'm not going to talk about where I've been or where I'm going next week, but I do want to talk about, these guys will do a very good job of that. 3 events that I have witnessed in the past month or so. And all of them concern the police. And in particular, mostly our Chief Darren Moody. And I just wanted to share with you the event we had down at the coffee shop down here. It was called Coffee with a Cop. And that coffee shop was full of people for what, Darren? Is he here? 2 hours? 3 hours? I don't know. 3 hours. And Mr. Moody took it upon himself to start taking orders at the window and handing out coffee at the window. And we all got a kick out of it, and the customers got a kick out of it. Yeah, it slowed us down a little bit, but you know what? It didn't matter, because it was a fun thing to do, and it gave the police, they were out in the open, visibility. We had probably five or six other officers at different times in the shop talking to people. It was a great thing. Another one is the spooktacular we had just the other night, on Halloween night. Again, Mr. Moody is walking around town, walking around those blocks, handing out candy to kids. And then, as he was doing that for an hour or more, I don't know, another group of officers pulled up in a car and turned on their lights and attracted all the kids over to them, and they were all handing out candy to kids. And then, on a more personal note, last night, cut me off if I'm going too long, okay? But my wife lost her purse up at Walmart. And I called her like 5 o'clock and said, hey, what are you doing? What's going on? And she was checking out of Walmart. As soon as she came home, discovered her purse wasn't there. After we ate dinner, she went back out to the car and looked, not there. So after calling the credit card people and getting all that straightened out, cutting up cards, she decided to report it. And who comes to our door but Officer Pickens? Does anybody know Officer Pickens? All right. And we described the purse. This is after my wife had already gone back to Walmart, by the way. 10 minutes after he left, I swear it wasn't any longer than that, he came back with her purse. It's unbelievable to me, but I just want to tell you that there are good things going on with the Shelton Police Department, and I just wanted to share that.
Thank you.
Next.
Councilmember
I'm
Nisco.
going to tell you what I did. Let's see. I'm in the wrong month. I actually have nothing to report except for tomorrow I'm going to have a meeting of the Housing Behavioral Health Board and a business after hours.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Kranz.
All right. Last week I did attend, along with several councilmen here, the wellness little chili cook-off, and that was kind of an exciting event. They had, the night before, they only had 3 entries, and then we showed up, and there were like 16 people. So the troops rallied up and made the chili real quick, and so, anyway, I don't know who won that one, but, on November 21st, I will be attending my criminal justice board meeting, and in between there and around there, I'll be attending all the other staff briefings and city council study sessions and the council meetings, as we all do, so thank you.
Okay, thank you. Upcoming weeks, we're working on the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee, reforming that, or not reforming that, but getting a new member. Deputy Mayor Peterson and Mike and I met with Congressman Kilmer, who was in town yesterday. Had a good meeting with him and we appreciated his time because technically Shelton is out of his district, so we really appreciated that. And upcoming meetings will be with the Mason County Housing Authority, which will be next week. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. In addition to the study session and public records training and the meeting with Congressman Kilmer, the next meeting I have coming up is the opiate stakeholders meeting. And so I'm in contact with Abe Gardner and North Mason Fire about that next meeting.
Thank you.
Pretty quiet week. I had my left board meeting this morning and business after hours tomorrow night. That's my week.
Okay, Councilmember Schmidt?
Council members, mayor, deputy mayor, I'm going to take the opportunity to update you as chair of the Tiny Homes Subcommittee on what is going on with that so far. In front of you, I got a few pieces of paper, a draft lease agreement by our very own city attorney, John Collins, a tiny homes map provided through Ponza, as well as a synthesis of basically what occurred during the subcommittee meeting on October the 19th here at City Hall. So long and short of it, for the most part, what we did was we went through this draft lease agreement. It was basically the first time I had seen it, and I believe either of the other two council members and mayor and council member Onisco either. So we reviewed through these step by step, and in bold in each category here are sort of the three topics that what I'll say kind of jumped out as a decision or vision setting or policy setting type of an item that the council is going to need to have to weigh in on collectively. So my suggestion with this is, I don't have to necessarily read this all to you, I'll review through it quickly, but my suggestion is we take this back to a study session type of a forum to sort of section by section, I would suggest, instead of all at once, but section by section here, just kind of go through these things to make sure we've given it the appropriate attention it deserves. First and foremost, the resident eligibility clause, if you look on page 3 in the lease agreement, section 10, part A, that was the first thing we sort of initially started talking about. One of the questions that came up was whether or not the tiny homes village was going to be for homeless veterans in Mason County, only veterans in Mason County, only veterans any county, veterans with priority in Mason County, and anyone else to fill the 30 potential tiny homes. The three of us at the time, we didn't have a clear answer from the council. That's something for the 7 of us to debate, deliberate on, and determine where we want to go from there. You can see some of the questions. And then reviewing through that eligibility portion of the lease agreement, I ask you to take some time to read through that and kind of circulate some thoughts for that upcoming study session. Removal of building materials. On the site, if you look at the map in the upper northeast corner, I guess, kind of, sort of, you'll see something sort of outlined referred to as exfil material. So basically, the surplus property that we currently have has about 5,000 cubic yards of surplus aggregate material. It has value. It is used for things such as construction projects, et cetera. It's still on the property. Ultimately, that is going to need to be potentially moved. One of the suggestions was to leave it in place and fence it off. All those things come potentially at a cost to the city. Also at some level of risk as well to the city, because we have to continuously potentially re-enter that property. There's also some other issues there too. It's not just fill material. I believe there's some debris from like fallen trees and whatnot, and culvert pieces and stuff like that. So anyways, there's some assets that the city still owns on that surplus property that we need to remove and potentially relocate, again, at a cost to the city. So sort of thinking about that, what do we want to kind of do about that? What sort of direction do we want to give to the city manager on that front? And then the last bullet point I'll go over is the abandonment of a drinking water well in the sort of southwest corner, south corner, whatever. You see the little dot on the map, and around that is a 100-foot SCA sanitary control area. There's currently an unused drinking water well in that area. It is, according to Ecology and Department of Health, an active well. And that obviously has a 100-foot radius, so you can't build or impact that area with any sort of drainage or sewer or anything like that. So the intention would be potentially to cap that off and formally abandon that through that process, which it is a process to remove that. It's not just shut it off and leave it alone. And there is, again, a cost to that. An estimated cost, I believe, of around $20,000 to the city potentially to do that. So those are things to take into consideration when reviewing the lease agreement as well as this. And what I'll kind of leave you with is a comment with this project in general, just as a couple next steps. I agree that taking this, I would think we would agree that taking these individual points to a study session forum would work best so we can debate these issues and figure out best course of action moving forward. But before we even do that, I want to just reiterate a few things related to the priorities and the flow and process of things here in the next couple of months. We have something knocking on our door right now that's probably our most important thing, which is we need to hire and seat a new city manager. We don't want to necessarily let other tasks delay that progress as well, so we want to make sure we're giving that the appropriate attention. The second thing is we're looking tonight at a preliminary draft budget for 2019. I want to make sure that we give that the appropriate time as well. So not that I'm looking to pull the reins back and delay anything necessarily, but I believe our first two priorities, hire the city manager, approve and pass a budget for 2019, and then the third thing, we need to really look at what we want to see as a strategic vision for the city. We heard tonight about some things occurring downtown related to economic growth, potential impacts. We need to look at what we want to see as a council when it comes to our comprehensive plan, our codification of downtown, and within the city limits, and the vision that we want to set for that moving forward into 2019, all kind of in alignment with the budget and what we have available to us. We need to take that time to talk about that and move through this before I think we start really digging into some of these other projects. So just some comments from me on that, but completely open to more discussion as time goes on. So
Thank you, Councilmember.
thank you very much.
So, yeah, I totally agree this would be a study session. We'll have to work on when that occurs.
Thanks.
Based on other priorities. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda as published?
I move to approve the consent agenda as read.
Second?
Okay.
But,
It was not read when we,
oh, wow.
As submitted.
as, would you like to rephrase the motion?
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, consent agenda is approved. Thank you. Okay, next we're going to our first business item, and we're going to look for, excuse me. I apologize to everyone tonight. We will recess out of our regular meeting and begin a public hearing on a couple items. The first will be on consideration of ad valorem tax for 2019. And turn that over to Interim City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor Rogers, council members. I'd like to reintroduce Sandy Hines. Before Sandy starts on her presentation, I just want to say what a smart choice the council made earlier this year when you hired Sandy to be your budget director. and to help facilitate not only the development of the 2019 revenue forecast, but also the preliminary budget that you'll hear about in a moment. But also I want to say that, you know, Sandy has done a yeoman's job of reorganizing, recollecting, refocusing our finance department, particularly in terms of our budget development process. And I know that you've worked with her long and hard over the last couple of months on this budget. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Sandy.
Thank you, Mike. That's on. Okay. So this will be the first of our 2 public hearings on the City of Shelton's budget tonight, as we had 2 for the Park District. The first one will be the revenue public hearing that deals with the City of Shelton and particularly the general fund's revenue sources, including the ad valorem property tax. So the purpose and action tonight for this public hearing is informational briefing. We will discuss the property tax levies, both regular and EMS for the city, and other general revenue sources that fund basic city services. We'll have an opportunity for the public to comment, and there will be no action taken on this with the council tonight, and that hopefully we'll recommend moving that to the council meeting for the next time. So I wanted to provide a little property tax history. So for the last several years, relating to the city's regular property tax, you can see that the assessed valuation for the city has varied between 2016 and 2017. It actually went down and then back up again and continued to go up projected for 2019. These are preliminary numbers from the Mason County Assessor's Office that they provided. They will be providing us updated numbers, usually not before the required November 30th deadline by RCW to have our certification into the county. And so what they do is we certify at the end of the month, and then as they have new numbers, specifically if they benefit the city and by increasing our available levy amount, they allow us to turn in an updated certification. But you will be passing an ordinance hopefully later this month then to take the allowed 1% optional, as we'll discuss a little later. But then they provide additional numbers for both AV and state assessed utilities. The rate, the levy amount has then also varied as it went down between 16 and 17, and yet our rate went up. And we had talked about this a little bit during the council budget retreats, as far as that the levy rate is not set by the council, only the levy amount is set by the council, and the rate is actually just a product of the levy amount and the assessed valuation provided by the assessor. So as your levy amount goes down, your rate actually does the inverse and goes up. And then as you saw in 2018, when the property tax levy went up, our rate went down, and again, with it increasing next year, the rate will continue to go down. So calculation of next year's property tax amount, we take last year's actual levy of just over $2 million. The 1% optional increase, should council choose to approve that, is about $20,000. New construction that the county assesses is added on top of that and is not counted towards the 1%, and that's about $9,000 for this year, for next year. And then it's a refunds process that comes from the state is just a little over $2,000. So that would provide us a regular levy amount for next year of $2,038,460. And then our preliminary AV of about $713 million then provides us a rate of about $2.86. The city also has an EMS levy. For the last couple of years, assessed valuation for the EMS district, if you will, is the same. It's contiguous to the city limits, so the assessed valuation that you see here is the same that was listed for the city. The levy rate, this EMS levy has a statutory maximum of 50 cents, and that even though the council doesn't set the rate, depending on how the assessed valuation and the amount of levy that the council wants to take, will affect the rate, but always has to have that consideration of within that 50-cent statutory limit. The property tax amount for the EMS has continued to go up. Much smaller increase between 18 to 2019. We'll talk about that in just a minute, but you will see that the rate has been eroding from that 50 cents that was set back in 2017 with a 6-year levy that was passed, a renewal. The EMS levy is every 6 years, and that's why the 2017 amount is the 50-cent statutory maximum, because that's when it was reset. And so we would be then into, I believe, our 3rd year then, going into next year, our 4th year of next year of the 6 years. There's a couple years left before the renewal would have to take place. There's 2 different slides provided here. Property tax, because of the way it works with the assessed valuation and the levy amount, and the assessor's office provides all kinds of numbers to us called highest lawful limit, and you have your statutory limit, that we are actually bumping up against our highest lawful allowed limit. So the highest lawful, based on the county's numbers, was $308,000 for 2018. So taking that, adding the 1% optional with the new construction and the administrative refunds provides a total amount for next year that would be little over $313,000. And that was what they called your highest lawful. It's still below what the statutory limit of the 50 cents is, but it's the amount that it would be allowed that you could take because of that limitation of the 1% each year from when it was reset. Our amount last year for the actual levy, or for 2018, is $312,250, and that's because we had quite a big amount of administrative refunds in 2018 that actually put it up, and because that revenue, or the administrative refunds are added on after you do your calculation of the 1% increase, they don't count against that, but they do then count as how much you've actually levied. And so because our actual levy for 2018 is $312, and you add your new construction in of $1,400, there is no allowable capacity then for the 1%, because it would send us to about $315,000, which would send us over that highest lawful of the $313,000. So for the EMS property tax amount, there will be no 1% optional that's allowed. As the county assessor says, you can certify it, but they won't give it to you. Basically means they're not allowed to provide more than the lawful limit. So even if you certify for it, they're not going to be able to give you more than what you're lawfully allowed. So that would be that. In the preliminary ordinance that you had in your packet, there was an amount listed at 0.26% of an increase for the EMS. And that was some early numbers, and after clarification with the county, we've come up with that there is actually no capacity for the 1%. So we will be redoing that ordinance for you next council meeting that takes that out and puts language in that says that we are not taking any % increase for the EMS levy.
Is a question, okay? Are you good with that? I have a question about this. Yeah. Something that I think I'd like to look at in our next study session related to this is the current ILA, and just making sure that we're covering for that with the EMS levy and what we're paying, because it is broken down into the 3 services through Central Mason. I want to make sure that it's adequate or being covered within that. I haven't seen the copy of the actual ILA, so I'm not sure how that's actually broken down. We're probably fine, but just to double check.
Okay.
No further questions.
So the $313,974 would give us a rate of about 44 cents of that allowed statutory 50-cent amount. This is just a recap. So the regular levy would be about $2.86 per thousand of assessed valuation, and the EMS levy about 44 cents per thousand of assessed valuation, which provides a regular levy amount of $2,038,460 and an EMS levy of $313,974 towards the city's services. So one would ask, where does your property tax dollar go? So because all the numbers for 19 are preliminary, both ours, and I don't have all of the other taxing jurisdictions, we're going to take a look back at our current year of 2018 and where your current property tax dollar went. So There's 9 taxing districts that a city of Shelton resident would pay for through their property tax. The current rate, total city rate is $16.70 per thousand. Of that $16.70, the city of Shelton regular levy is 18.4 cents, with the EMS at 2.9, and then the SMPD Metropolitan Park District at 4.5 cents. You can see the largest share by far is the Shelton School District at almost 44 cents. Of that, every dollar goes to the school district. Then you have that county itself at about 8 cents. The regional library is 2.3 cents. Port is about 2 cents. You have the state of Washington at just over 16 cents. And then the hospital district at another 2.2 cents. So we're just about a quarter of every dollar then goes to all of the city-related property tax levies. So both regular EMS and related to the Metropolitan Park District is about a quarter of every dollar that a homeowner would pay through their property taxes. The rest goes to all the other taxing jurisdictions. This is the same information, just displayed in a different way as a pie chart. So the the gray large part is the state of Washington. No, school district, right. School district at the 44 cents. And then the orangey gold color would be the city's regular levy, with the blue is the EMS and the darker blue as the park districts. So just a different depiction of how that percentages then is broken up of the $16.70. So for a property owner that would be curious, as a rule of thumb, you look at your assessed value of your home that comes on the little cards that they send out. So as an example of 200,000, to make it easy, you just divide by 1,000 or just drop off the last 3 digits, so $200, and then you take the full rate, that's $16.70, and that would provide an amount of $3,340 would be what a homeowner out of assessed value of 200,000 would pay. That obviously varies every year depending on the assessed value of that person's home, as well as what all the 9 different taxing jurisdictions would choose to do with their levies each year. And it also has a weird relationship between how your home value goes up in relation to others. Because of the taxing jurisdictions setting their levy amount and having those be capped by that 1%, more homes or higher values or lower values will basically spread those same dollars in a different proportion. So some homeowners may see their values go up, but their property tax go down, or vice versa, just depending on how it all relates to the next person. In general fund, as far as revenue overall, I provided some history at high category levels. We have taxes for next year is about 7.7 million. That would include your property taxes, sales tax, B&O tax, utility taxes. Licenses and permits, it's a little of an increase over the 2018 budget, and that would include where the business licenses are, and that was with our increase that council has approved for the business license. It is a decrease over 18 estimate, and that's mostly due to the building and planning related, like building permits that were quite high this year that we're not expecting that same level of activity into next year. Intergovernmental is all of the grants, federal, state, and local, as well as the state shared revenues of liquor taxes and marijuana excise taxes and criminal justice. Charges for service, any type of charge, external as well as the interfund charges are included in that category. The fines and penalties on types of things is late B&O payments, late or business licenses not paid. Any other types of fine and penalties related to the court are also included in that category. You would see a decrease there a little bit. There has been some changes at the state level that they are keeping a larger share of some of our municipal court-related revenue, and so we're expecting some decreases in that area. As well as we had in the past year or two, we've had some big emphasis on some of the B&O tax and business licenses delinquencies and kind of went after those real hard. And so hopefully, and we don't have too much trend on how much that would account for now that the state's doing the business license, how that's gonna play out. So we'll have to see how that goes for a little while. And then miscellaneous, any other types of rental revenue, interest income, sale of, assets and scrap, those kind of smaller items are included that. So the total general fund revenue projected for next year is just about 11.2 million. Little over $600,000 increase over this year's budget. And that's mostly due to a large area in the taxes. We also are starting to recognize some additional of the solid waste utility tax once the county has recouped their prepayment, which we expect to be in about the end of first quarter for 2019. That additional utility tax will start coming to the city as well. So there's a portion of that that's incorporated into this.
Question on Sandy, clarify. So 2017, that number is high because it's cash basis, and that includes the $1 million.
For 2017,
solid
it does
waste.
include the $1 million.
That's why that number, one of the
yes.
reasons that number is high.
Yeah, that includes the $1 million prepayment.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then just a breakdown, because taxes are such a large portion of the general fund, just broke it down by how much, what proportion that is of the total tax budget. So the overall property and EMS taxes are about 30% of that tax budget, or 30%, sorry, of the total budget. Sales tax, 34%, so it's our largest source. Business and excise tax, so our B&O tax, about 9%. And then utility taxes come in third at 25% at just under 2 million. And there's a few miscellaneous ones in there. And that is our revenue hearing presentation.
Okay. Questions, comments from the council for Sandy or for Mike on this? Okay, public comment, Donna, on the,
I have one public comment, but Patricia, did you want to speak now or in the next one? Okay, Patricia Van Hay.
Patricia, I asked you to state whether you're in the city resident or
No,
not, please.
no, I reside
Thank
on
you.
Lake 111 Southeast Lupin Place. But I am interested in what's going on, because I'm in Shelton an awful lot. With the money that comes in and what's going out, I keep thinking if I handled my budget the way it's done here, I'd be living in the woods in a tent. How much does the city actually owe? How much are they in debt? And does any money that comes in go towards paying that debt? Or do we just keep carrying it and the interest keeps going on and on and on? To me, that's a sure way of fire of never getting out of it. It seems that there's the money goes in different ways that has no reward. Is any of this tax money going for what I saw as possible new projects, like this design concept for Wallace Neeland Boulevard and 13th Brockdale Road intersection? Is that going to take some of the money? What do we need that for right now? We need that like we need a hole in the head. There's such a thing as you know what you owe, you know what you're responsible for, you make sure that you're covered, and then if there's excess money, then you go on to using it for something in the future. And the other thing is, what is a 20-year plan here or a 30-year plan of what's going to become to this city? If you're fixing all these entrances and exits, there's nothing in the city for anybody to come to, what good does it do? What do we have to offer here in Shelton? The businesses are all closing. You go along the street and every other store, they're not open anymore. So there's a total loss of money right there. And why, I just don't understand why a plan hasn't been thought about, a long-term plan of what they want, what does want to be done with the city, because it's not a mill city anymore. Unfortunately, they allowed Sierra Pacific to go back and take, which was really a prime piece of property, which could have been turned into a big tourist attraction and draw people in. But what is Shelton right now? It's a pit stop on 101 to get coffee, fill up your tank, and go on. Nobody stops here. There's just nothing to offer. So I think the leadership has to come up with some new ideas and think in the future, what do we want to become? Engage our workings towards that. And another thing.
Thank you, Patricia. That
I want
3
to say
minutes.
that this 3-minute limit is for the birds. It was 5 minutes before, and the First Amendment right, we should have freedom of speech, enough time to say what we want to say.
Thank you, Patricia.
It should be turned back to 5 minutes. And if not, I'm going to write something to the Attorney General's office and ask him if it's legal.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, so I will ask for the first reading of ordinance 1931-1118.
Ordinance number 1931-1118, an ordinance of the City of Shelton, Washington, increasing ad valorem taxes in the City of Shelton for calendar year 2019.
Okay, we're requested to move this ahead to an action of that item on November 20th. Do we concur on that?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, so that closes our public hearing for the revenue side, and we will open a public hearing for the 2019 preliminary budget. Back to
Great.
Mike.
Thank you. So what I'd like to do for the record is to read in the budget message. So I'm just going to read exactly what was presented to you in a hard copy. Despite the significant changes and challenges that occurred in 2018, the city has done a significant amount of work, provided a multitude of valuable services to the citizens of Shelton. While 2019 will be a rebuilding year for the city, it is poised to rebound from the tumult of this year. The new city council is leading the way with forward thinking and positive policy directives. I'm impressed with the commitment and diligence of each council member, and as a group, they are continually striving to work together to lead Shelton to a new future and to create an environment for an outstanding city government. The budget provides the framework for everything we will do. The city will focus on 3 main areas of vital importance: restoring trust and integrity, enhancing the quality of community services, and enriching community relationships. Foremost is the restoration of trust and integrity. The city currently enjoys excellent and long-standing leadership in community development, police, public works, and municipal court. The leadership team is augmented by seasoned interim leaders in the finance, clerks, and human resources departments. I anticipate permanent leaders in these positions to be named in the very near future, and I anticipate a new city manager will be leading this team late this year or early 2019. We will continue to enhance the quality of our community services through outstanding customer service, smooth permitting processes, and maintaining and enhancing vital infrastructure. We will work hard to enrich our relationships with the community, whether that be neighborhood groups, the business community, the Shelton School District, Port of Shelton, PUD3, Mason General Hospital, Mason County Government, and others. We are all part of the greater Shelton community. By working together, Shelton will be a much stronger community in the future. Finally, this budget is a financial plan that sets the stage for a bright future. However, as in all rebuilding processes, there will be some short-term discomfort caused by reductions in levels of service in some areas. I'm confident that these reductions will not significantly impact the excellent level of community service the city currently enjoys. As the city continues to return to economic stability, along with good management and financial discipline, it will result in that bright future. Respectfully submitted, Michael McCarty, Interim City Manager. So I want to talk a little bit about those key accomplishments. In working with city staff over the last 6 weeks since I've been here, I continue to be impressed by the number of accomplishments that they have achieved. And I'm not going to go through the whole list because there's 4 pages of them, but I do want to highlight a few, starting with financial services. As you know, there were some significant problems with the 2018 adopted budget. Those were identified. The budget was revised earlier this year and was adopted by the City Council in early September. The 2019 preliminary budget was completed with I think, an easier to understand, better formatted format. After a variety of unanticipated delays, the 2016 annual report was finally submitted to the Washington State Auditor's Office. Hooray, hooray. The 2017 annual report was submitted by the deadline, which was May 18th. So we have caught up. Police Department, Councilmember Dorsey, you know the significant work that's happening in our police department and good things there. I'm very proud of the police department for beginning the accreditation process through the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs. There's no doubt in my mind that they'll achieve that accreditation, and that's a huge kudo to this police department. You should be proud of them. We partnered with the Shelton School District to provide 2 additional school resource officers, sponsored our own Police Reserve Academy, which was also attended by outside agencies, and we graduated 5 new reserve police officers for the Shelton Police Department. Police staff participated in many community events. Almost not a week goes by when Chief Moody or someone from the police department isn't participating in a community event, like Choice High School dinner and auction, United Way auction, Sound Learning, Spelling Bee, Coffee with a Cop, Spooktacular, and many, many more. Community Development Department, the very, very busy, yet I will say understaffed department. Despite that, despite the fact that building permit activity increased 21% from 2017, and a number of large permitting processes, including the Shelton School District, the new McDonald's restaurant, and the medical building at Mason General Hospital. We've developed a great relationship with our legislative delegation, and particularly relating to community development, we're successful in receiving a direct appropriation from the legislature to remodel and do much needed repairs to the Shelton Public Library. Position of Recreation Coordinator was filled in 2018, and because of that, we've expanded both youth and adult recreation activities. We continue to work on partnerships with the community, such as the historic log monument at Overlook Park, which you recognize the partners Sierra Pacific, the Mason County Master Builders, Christmastown Kiwanis, and Builders First Source to renovate that monument to make sure that it stands for a long, long time in the future. Maybe not as long as the log is old, but it will be there for a long time. Work closely with community groups, raising funds for the new YMCA in Shelton. On the fire side, even though it's a contract for services and we don't operate our own fire department any longer, I think it's appropriate to call them out in some of the success stories that they've had. Their responses have been significant this year, totaling over 1,800 calls inside the city alone. They have a very successful fire prevention program to help educate citizens, not only in terms of fire prevention and especially emergency service preparedness. Lately, the department purchased a 105-foot ladder truck, which will allow them rooftop access to any building inside the city. So kind of behind the scenes, we have an outstanding information technology department led by Mr. Tim over here in the corner with the headphones on. He just waved. They do a great job of the two of them in that department supporting, I don't know how many laptops and desktops they support, but it's a lot. They do a great job with that. One of the significant accomplishments this year was providing for VPN access for employees and council members, any contractor that we choose to allow that access to. It stands for Virtual Private Network, and it allows us to work off-site if need be. You get weekend work out of people that way.
Yeah.
One of the cost-saving measures that the IT department did was to fully administer all of our cell phone contracts, bring them all together under one Verizon plan that allows us to quickly turn around phones when they're out of date, to upgrade them, and to stay current, plus take advantage of significant pricing discounts. Municipal court. We have a busy municipal court. Almost 1,900 traffic and non-traffic civil and criminal violations were filed and processed. Almost 2,500 hearings have been held in this room. And a program that the municipal court does that I think you should be very, very proud of, and that's the community service program. It continues to be a valuable component of the court for authorized and approved offenders. We get a significant amount of work done in this community with those community service folks. Last year, we picked up 570 bags of garbage, 90 hypodermic needles. Not quite so proud of that, but they're picking them up regardless. They assisted the Turning Point Domestic Violence Center with landscaping. Our crew spent several days trimming, cutting, weed eating, and raking the property, and we delivered firewood to needy folks. Public Works, we're all aware of public works projects that have been going on. We've paved 20 residential blocks this year. Turner Avenue paving project was completed. Sanitary Sewer Basin 3 it has started and will be completed next year, as well as the Downtown Connector project going up Alder Street and Olympic Highway North also will be completed next year. Economic development. This is an area that I hope that the city will give increased focus to over the years. We've developed, you've adopted a 5-year economic development plan and a business development and recruitment strategy. You'll be discussing the implementation matrix later this month as we move forward with our economic development efforts inside the city of Shelton. Communications, also a very important function for the city, one that has grown significantly over the last year. Our communications department manages our online presence and social media accounts, and that presence has increased by approximately 764% this year. That's a huge increase in social media contacts. We draft and develop press releases almost continuously, keeping people informed on road closures and a variety of other issues that will affect them in terms of city projects, both positively and otherwise. We promote a wide variety of city events, community forums, and open houses. And last of all, I want to mention our government relations division, which is close to my heart because that's from who I was recently employed at the Association of Washington Cities. And annually, we would encourage all the cities in the state to develop a forward-thinking legislative agenda for their communities, which you have done, not only in 2018, but also prepared a legislative agenda in preparation for the 2019 legislative session. And it resulted in appropriations for Shelton. Shelton Timberland Library, almost $300,000. The Downtown Connector Project, $1 million. Shelton Basin 3 Sewer Rehab Project, $1.5 million. And innovative affordable housing in this community, $3 million. So again, I applaud the city staff for their diligence and their hard work and efforts in 2018, and I look forward to continuing to work with you, at least for a short time in 2019. So, thank you very much. Now I'd like to turn it back over to Sandy to get into a few more specifics on the proposed preliminary budget.
Thank you, Mike, for going through
You're
that.
welcome.
Thank you, Mike. This is the second public hearing for the evening, and this one deals with a public hearing on the overall 2019 preliminary budget. As previously, this is informational only with no action to be taken tonight. And as we developed this budget, we had several budget retreats with council and many good hours of conversation through those retreats. And Mike and I worked close and with Terry and with all the department directors to develop a budget that council would have more information, accurate information, and at a level of which hopefully everyone will find some level of detail that they want, whether that's a lot of detail or a little detail. Our main objectives when we were developing the budget was to maintain the fiscal responsibility by balancing the budget. Within that sounds obvious, but within that, what we were trying to make sure we did was balance ongoing programs with ongoing revenue and not fund ongoing services with only one-time revenue. The objectives obviously fill the key leadership positions that Mike alluded to. City manager, finance director, human resources manager, and city clerk are all slated to be worked on and filled over the coming months. To sustain the city's current workforce, despite some reductions in reductions in service, closed bargaining units have the negotiated amounts that they have already agreed to incorporated into the budget, and those that are unrepresented or expiring will have to be negotiated in the coming future. To fully budget the reserves according to the city's council's reserve policies, and we can talk about that, but the reserves that council has set and those targets are fully met within this budget. And then creating a framework for new economic growth, has been mentioned many times tonight. So the total city 2019 overall budget is just over 27 million, and that's including all funds, general fund, utilities, capital, street operating, everything. Of that amount, the general fund is about 43% of that total at just about 11.5 million for the general fund. That general fund number does exclude streets for this coming year. We separated the street operating function off from the general fund and are creating a street operating fund where any directly related street revenue and expenditures will be accounted for and budgeted for. This will make it much more transparent to see the revenue sources, including the Transportation Benefit District revenue, the traffic impact fees, and the gas tax from the state. All of those revenue sources will be in the street fund, as well as all of the staff and related expenditures to provide the street operations. So we will see a new fund for that this coming year and accounted for separately. So that new street fund is about 2.3 million in total, and that represents about just a little over 8.5% of the total budget. Overall, this budget includes what we have discussed in the previous public hearing, which is the property tax levy with the allowed 1% increase, and with also the additional amounts of new construction, any adjustments that the state provides for us. The EMS levy does not include the allowed increase, but it does continue at its highest lawful amount. The 2019 preliminary budget does include the general purpose reserves at their targeted amount. And so that is the strategic reserve and the cash flow reserve, those two, both a little over 6.3% for both of those. So those are fully funded. And the 2019 preliminary budget excludes most of the one-time adjustments that council approved back in September. There was a whole host of one-time adjustments that were needed for 2018. Almost all of those are then removed, then moving into 19. There was a few that from one time that we felt related to some record service help with the city clerk position still being vacant, that we continued to put some additional money one time again into 2019 for that. But most of the 2018 one-time amounts have been removed so that we got back to the core basic services. This is a table by fund for the total budget, the just over 27 million. You see the general fund there at the 11.5 million and the street fund at 2.3. Tourism, where the hotel and motel lodging tax revenue comes in and has to be used for tourism purposes, 56,000. Our bond fund, so our limited and unlimited UTGO and LTGO debt is where that is. So that's not related to any capital, or I'm sorry, any utility debt. That is just general purpose debt. Our capital fund, where street and road projects are accounted for, just over 2.1 million. Our water fund, that includes both operations, debt, and capital, all within the one fund of just shy of 2.4 million. Sewer, again, all operations, debt, and capital included in that budget of just over 6 million. Solid waste, at this point, right now, we didn't have any planned expenditures. We know there's going to be potentially some stuff, but right now there wasn't anything to go ahead and account for related to the C Street cleanup. Storm drainage, about 800,000. The payroll and benefits fund is where the city is kind of self-managed for their unemployment claims. So instead of paying a rate to the state just automatically, we set aside our own funding, and then any unemployment claims that come forward, the state bills us for, and then they're paid from this amount that we've kind of set aside as a reserve. EM&R, so the equipment maintenance and rental fund, accounts for most all the street vehicles and large equipment. And then a firefighter's pension fund, and then a library endowment fund with the total city budget then at just over 27 million. General fund overview. So the general fund revenue that we've been speaking about tonight does pay for all the basic services and the normal daily operations of the city, which include obviously your police, court, and under that we have jail contracts, and then contracts related to, we have our animal control services and the jail contract. Recreation activities and events, most of which then is reimbursed, a lot of it from the SMPD. Maintenance, parks maintenance, facilities maintenance, all our planning and building and permitting type services. Code enforcement, economic development, and then all the internal support functions of the executive administration, your finance, legal, human resources, IT, clerk, and records services. So this is a little bit of a repeat, but this is the general fund revenue history table. And that shows us our overall revenue of the 11.2 million. And that was kind of, we went through that during the revenue public hearing. And then the general fund expenditures. So this provides a look at by department, the total expenditures, historical as well as for 2019. The 2016, 17, and 18 numbers do include the street information. And then 2019 does not. So you'll see a drop then between 18 and 19. Some of that obviously related to the one-time expenditures being removed as well as the street operations being removed. And the departments, if you remember from the 2018 budget, when we listed the general fund departments, there was quite a long list of them. Some of them not necessarily departments in of themselves, but program areas, if you will. And so what we tried to do with this budget and new format is try and group those program areas together under a department title, and then provided each program area's budget in the document for you, so that not each program area was listed as kind of a department. So things like animal control are rolled up within police, and then your administration has the legal and the HR and the IT within it. But each area has its own program section within the budget that you can see its independent expenditures. The general fund expenditures just depicted into a pie as far as percent, the largest percent being towards police at just over about 26%. And then community development and fire EMS about 13%, administration at 12%. Non-departmental, so that is somewhat of maybe a new title that we've included this year. It included basically all of the transfers out, the principal and interest debt payment that was funded out of the general fund, and the capital. And those had been previously listed separately in the kind of the department listing, and so we've grouped them. Non-departmental just being that basically they apply to the whole general fund in the city, not necessarily one department. So we've grouped those together. And that is it. If there's any questions,
Okay.
I'm happy to answer.
Sandy? Councilmember
So
Franz?
I just had a question there. There's a difference between the 11,505 and 11,238. I've been kind of thinking about that all day long. So are we still 200,000 short? Are we still looking for that, or am I missing something?
No, we're not. And we'll get into that a little bit more in the study session next week. I can give you some details, but basically it accounts for the fact that there's about $200,000 of one-time items in the 2019 budget. And between new requests for equipment or the, part-time records help, those kind of one-time things. So those are funded then from cash out of the fund balance instead of from ongoing revenue.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Questions for Sandy tonight? I guess we'll have a
Look
full
forward to the study
Study
session.
session.
study session.
Study session.
So, okay,
Fun times next week.
all right.
All right.
So now it's time for public comment on the preliminary budget.
There is no public back.
Okay, so no public comment. So based on that, we will close the public hearing
Okay.
on the budget and move on back to our regular meeting tonight. And at this point, we'll go to the business agenda. We're gonna do things a little differently. Any items have public comment tonight?
No.
Donna? Okay,
None.
all right, so none on business. So we'll move to the first business agenda, which is community development. Director Mark Ziegler is gonna speak to us about the Civic Center rotating art gallery.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. It's that time again to bring you recommendations from the Shelton Arts Commission for the Civic Center Rotating Art Gallery. The Arts Commission advertised for artists to submit for the gallery with a deadline of October 26th. 5 artists submitted for the gallery. Arts Commission met on the 30th of October to jury the work, and I'm bringing to you today their recommendations. There's 4 artists, 13 total pieces, and I believe in your packets there's pictures of the art. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those. And with the council's concurrence, we ask you to place this on the action agenda for November 20th.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Any comments or questions for Mark? Okay, and concurrence to move it ahead, all right? Next item, we'll be back to Director Ziegler on the traffic box covers, is that correct?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, council members. A new project I'm bringing to you with, that I'm really pleased to bring to you tonight with a partnership that we built through the Martha Reed Foundation. I know there's representatives here tonight to watch the proceedings here and I think kind of cheer this project on. They initiated this project with the city and with Public Works and Community Development to make a call for public artists to create wraps for the traffic signal boxes within the city. There are 6 of those. These are often structures that get graffitied or just kind of become they're just there, they're nothing special. And I think we've seen examples in other communities that have really brought these to the forefront and added to the beautification of our community and interest. So with the Martha Reed Foundation support, the Shelton Arts Commission called for artists. We had a public vote via social media, received 463 votes total for the 6 pieces that were placed on the ballot. The top 3 of those are of the art pieces are what I'm bringing to you tonight for potential approval for the action agenda for the 20th. These pieces would be placed within 3 of the 6 locations within the city. I know we have 7th and Alder down there, and we don't have any traffic signal boxes there yet, so we may seek one of the other locations as the final resting place for one of the traffic control signal box wraps.
Okay, comments, questions for Mark? Okay, move ahead.
Move ahead.
Okay, next item is back to Director Ziegler on a change in city policy.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a result of recent surplus action we brought to the council on a month ago, I guess now, for 120 West Nealon Street. And in looking at the policy, there's some things that really need to be clarified for operational efficiencies. One of those changes was that when a property was declared surplus, our existing policy required us to get an appraisal and hire a broker to broker that real estate. Well, if that happened each and every time we had properties come available, I think it really is an inefficient process. So what the policy is proposing is that we would be able to hire a broker to represent the city in real estate sales based on the council's approval. So each real estate sales agreement would come back to the council for approval, but we'd have a broker essentially on retainer, if you will, or on contract that could represent the city for those services over a period of time through an RFP process. So we go through a public process, select the most qualified candidates based on a number of criteria, and that's experience, knowledge of the city, commission rates, and then bring those back to the council for approval, and they could handle the real estate services for sales for the city of Shelton. And so with your, again, consensus, I'd ask that we'd place the resolution 11381018 on the action agenda for November 20th.
This is put out to all brokers in Mason County.
We will advertise, publicly. We'll advertise it through our normal means, but we'll also certainly reach out to local brokerage firms to give them the opportunity to be involved.
Just in the city or the whole county?
In the entire area, absolutely,
Okay.
yeah.
Mark, question, would this be, if we had a very unique piece of property come up that maybe a broker would be, the broker we initially picked wouldn't be a great choice for, we have the option to go individually with that?
As a council, certainly have the option as well. As well, if an appraisal, if it's unique and an appraisal is really the right route to go, that's the council's prerogative too. So through the through the surplus process, staff would ask the council for permission to move forward with the broker services or to move forward with the appraisal at that time, and then we'd have a path forward through your direction.
Okay, thanks. Okay, consensus to move ahead? Oh, excuse me,
I'm sorry.
Councilman Dorsey.
I was just thinking, and he'll be on, you say some kind of retainer, but only when he's actually working.
Yeah, a contract, if you will.
All
So the payment would be strictly by commission for sales of the property. So
okay.
as the policy states, then they would, the brokers in their RFPs would propose a commission rate for those properties. They'd be responsible for any advertisement, market analysis, marketing, escrow, and closure of the real estate deal, and then obviously that commission would be paid for the work they provided.
Okay.
Further questions for Mark? Okay, consensus to move ahead? All right,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Mark. Next, we're to Public Works Director Craig Gregory to go over vacation of street and alleys.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. As we discussed a week ago at the study session, the process and formalizing a process for street and alley vacations and ultimately right-of-ways, I certainly would answer any questions that you may have that we didn't answer at the study session, but we ask that you concur to move this to the action agenda for November 20th.
Thank you, Craig. Discussion tonight beyond what we had last week?
So, had several questions, just a couple maybe. Did we get answers to those questions? I thought we were going to pass this through Mr. Collins for clarification.
He is ready for you.
Fire away.
We have prepared him and he is ready for you.
Sweet. You thought you were going to get away with this. The easy one tonight, not really.
I'm being tagged in. So as I understand it, and please clarify the question if I'm not understanding it correctly, but there was some question as to whether there's a difference between streets, alleys, and right-of-ways.
Yeah.
Am I understanding the?
If you could clarify that, that would be great.
Okay.
Yeah.
So from a legal standpoint, there's really no difference between a street and an alley. Street and alleys are both what we put under the umbrella of a right-of-way. And so, for example, in the vacation ordinance, when we discuss vacating streets and alleys, the procedure for either of those is the same because they're both considered essentially a type of right-of-way. And I think that the distinction often, those terms are pretty much used interchangeably because, again, for the most part, there's not a huge difference between those from a legal standpoint. A right-of-way is essentially a dedicated piece of land that the public has an easement on for the right of travel. And so a right-of-way can be a public highway, it can be a county road, or it can be a street, which is in a city. There is some distinction in that sometimes, especially in some older legal documents, you'll see that a road is in a county, whereas a street is in a city. And an alley is basically a right-of-way in a city that's not dedicated for regular travel and is only used to access the back of a building. And so that's why those terms sort of came about. But there's actually a very old case called Ferguson v. Yakima, if you want to look it up, from 1926, that basically explained some of this right-of-way nonsense. It's not nonsense. It's important legal matters. But there's essentially no difference between a street and an alley when it comes to vacation procedures, for example. And then this whole road, street, alley, those are essentially different labels that we've put onto the broader concept of a right-of-way. And so when you do a vacation, what you're doing is you have a piece of land that the public has an easement on to travel, and a vacation basically kills that easement. So then the public doesn't have the right of travel over that piece of land anymore, and the land reverts to the abutting property owners. Because right-of-ways aren't actually owned by the city, oddly enough. Yeah, it's different from city property.
Thanks, John.
Does that clarify your question? Or?
The first question.
It does. That being said, so my sort of initial with this is using the terms interchangeably, alley, street, et cetera. Is that correct? Sounds like yes, we can when used in the language of an ordinance, let's say. Mm-hmm. The second part of this being, so you sort of explained that public right, are we actually able to vacate public right-of-way? You said yes and kind of no in that. So can you read one more time on that?
Oh, are we able to?
Technically, is the council able to vacate a public right-of-way?
I believe so, yes. The statutes permit the council to, on its own, initiate a petition to vacate a right-of-way.
Okay.
I'm forgetting off the top of my head, but there's state statutes that basically allow a city council on site. Typically, it's done by, I think we just did one recently that was done by a petition of the landowners, mm-hmm. Where I think you need 2/3 of the abutting landowners to sign a petition, and then you hold a public hearing, and then, decide whether to vacate it or not.
Land rights are complex, sorry.
They are, indeed.
Further questions for John or for Craig? Okay.
Thank you.
Can we have the first reading of ordinance number 1930-1018?
Ordinance number 1930-1018, an ordinance of the City of Shelton, Washington, adding a new chapter 12.18 to the City of Shelton Municipal Code relating to vacation of streets and alleys.
Okay, and we concur to move that forward to action for the 20th? All right, thank you. Okay, next we're moving on to the action agenda. Donna, has anyone signed up
No, there is no public comment.
on any of the items? Okay, so we'll start with item 1, which is back to Director Gregory about Access Shelton.
Thank you again, Mayor, council members. As we discussed about 8 weeks ago, the first time we visited the Access Shelton concept that was born out of the Downtown Connector project and the look at that project in itself, and then a roadmap really looking forward into the future for the city of Shelton and the public works staff. We also visited that concept at the study session a week ago, and really it defines more of our capital projects and also some maintenance activities and the 20 residential block paving and accounts for that, along with a funding strategy and a timeline for all of those projects, with the idea of each individual project coming back to the council for approval, but really just a timeline so that we can continue to plan, and we have concurrence from this council that they do approve the list of projects to move forward with through 2023 and the funding concept that comes along with those projects.
Council questions, comments for Director Gregory?
Well, I just want to add in that, we need to be able to be ready for our projects. When the money comes up, we need to be ready for it. And Craig has done a great job on this, so.
Okay, I should have asked for, do we have a motion to, on this?
I move to accept the funding strategy and timeline for the projects identified in the Access Shelton document and agree to review the concept annually at the spring budget retreat.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Now do we have further discussion?
Oh. I don't have anything to say.
You have to repeat everything.
Yeah, repeat it.
Repeat it? Okay, well.
No, that's okay.
I just want to add that
No, you're good.
we need to be ready for when the grants come up, we need to be ready for them.
Amen.
Any other?
Look
Okay.
forward to moving this forward.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to accept the funding strategy and timeline for the projects identified in Access Shelton document and agree to review that concept annually at the spring budget retreat. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Okay, next back to Director Gregory about 2 interlocal agreements for biosolids treatment.
So just a couple more customers that we would like to bring on, not only customers, but partners in our cost sharing of the biosolids facility and that process down at the main wastewater treatment plant, entering into agreements with the city of Yelm and also Thurston County for further treatment of digested sludge.
Okay, do we have a motion on this topic?
I move to accept the delivery of digested sludge from the city of Yelm and Thurston County by authorizing the mayor to sign the interlocal agreements for further treatment of digested sewer sludge.
Second.
Okay, discussion on this topic?
Yeah, I just wanted to throw this out there. We've talked about it at our study sessions, but wasn't too many people there. But I think it's important that everybody know that the sludge coming in, correct, is pre-tested, pre-treated, and pre-tested before it comes.
That is correct.
And it doesn't affect our wastewater treatment plant as far as overloading.
It does not affect the capacity of
right.
the wastewater treatment plant. That's correct. It's not only pre-tested but it is also tested by our staff and our lab also
Yeah.
on receiving that digested sludge also. So there are several different safeguards in place to prevent any contamination moving forward. But
Good.
that is correct. It goes directly into our digesters, up to the centrifuge, and then into the actual dryer itself, so it never hits the headworks. Anything that comes through the headworks is applied towards your maximum capacity and your average daily capacity, and it does not affect any part of the headworks. It does not enter that at any time.
Good. Thank you.
And/or record or with the state of Department of Ecology is good, correct?
Perfect. It's been perfect over, several years.
And we do more testing than required by law.
Absolutely.
Anything else?
Just a comment. So we had the opportunity to tour the sewage treatment plant, and that was a very impressive, I'll say, albeit, a dirty job. But I'm thoroughly impressed with the pride of ownership that the staff has down there and the diligence they put forth into maintaining public health, as well as the environmental aspects of things. I have no concerns with what's going on at the sewage treatment plant, and taking this additional sludge on to help us sort of balance a little bit in terms of revenue and other items. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilmember. And I'll just say the same thing, Joe. Thank you. And want to commend Public Works for bringing this forward. Also, the council for taking it seriously, and the discussion tonight is fairly short because we had a very lengthy discussion on it at our work session, our study session, and if people are interested in that discussion, I believe it's online, but it's a short discussion tonight, but it's been discussed thoroughly, including the tour. So I want to thank everyone who did that, and especially Public Works. So,
Mayor,
Okay.
I would also like to just reiterate what Councilmember Schmidt had spoke about, and the commitment that staff has down there for not only public health, but the environment, the shellfish industry in Hammersley Inlet, and the amount of commitment that they have towards that effort. And on their own accord, going out and getting certifications above and beyond what are required of them and their job descriptions should be commended.
thank you. Okay. So we have a motion and a second to accept the delivery of digested sludge from the city of Yelm and Thurston County, and authorizing me, the mayor, to sign the interlocal agreement for further treatment of digested sewer sludge. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. We're on to the next. Back to Director Gregory on ordinance relating to right-of-way violations.
So this is just a house cleaning step for Public Works and city staff. As you can see within the language in the briefing, only the highlighted area that's bolded is added to the language that's in the Shelton Municipal Code, and really it is just pointing back to the fee schedule that is adopted annually, and being able to change the fee schedule without going back and changing the actual municipal code. And that's really all this is just a house cleaning mechanism for the language of the municipal code.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Do we talk about it after I have a
Need a motion.
discussion?
Need a motion
I
on the
move to
floor.
adopt ordinance 1929-1018, and ordinance amending section 12.20.140 of the Shelton Municipal Code relating to the right-of-way permit violations.
Second.
Okay, so Councilmember Krantz.
Yeah, this is like the second reading on this, and I must have missed these numbers during the first time, or I would have brought it up. But I have a little bit of a question about, and I might be missing it, that if somebody is working in a right-of-way, like a homeowner, if he's got a U-Haul truck and he's moving stuff in and out of his house, or if he's painting or working on his house and he's got a ladder there in the right-of-way, could a inspector come up to him and levy a $250 fine for doing that without, if he didn't get a permit to park his U-Haul truck there? Or, I mean, is that how this reads?
Absolutely. And this is not just the second meeting we've had on this.
Right.
This is adopted within the fee schedule that we
Right.
had several meetings on less than a year ago that was added to the fee schedule.
Okay, so all I will say is that I think that's pretty heavy-handed if you had an inspector that was just out to levy fines. I mean, we have a homeowner that, he doesn't know he's gotta have a permit to put a ladder, into his right-of-way to go up and do something. If this was not, I just feel that $250 is a lot of money for an unintended mistake. That's my comment on this. And so it looks like we've already got this in place right now. A lot of this seems to be for the design for the contractor that continually violates the rule. And I would easily say if you had somebody that was continually doing this, that the $250 fine would probably be just fine. But I don't know, I think it's a lot of money for a homeowner to be doing something, or pressure washing, or whatever they might be doing to try and better their neighborhood, that they would have to go and get a permit every time they would want to get a ladder for a short period of time to do something on their house. So whether this was written 10 years ago or it's written now, I'm speaking against that fine for that. Repeat violators, I have no problem with. So don't know exactly how this all fits in with what we're doing here tonight. Maybe something for a later conversation, but I don't know if any of the other council people, kind of think that might be a little heavy-handed, so.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say,
Deputy Mayor.
I appreciate your comments, Councilmember Krantz, but tonight, what I appreciate is that this points back to the fee schedule, so if there are changes to the actual fees, that's a conversation that the council might have, but the actual amount is separate from the conversation about this particular ordinance. So I appreciate that it gives direction to that fee schedule, which the council can approve and change as needed, but this seems a better way to approach it as a housekeeping item, so thank you for that.
You're welcome. And just a couple of points of clarification. We will be bringing back a fee schedule update. Staff is working on that and has been working on that, so we will be bringing that back. I think it's scheduled for the end of this month to take a look at any of those fees within that fee schedule. But just really a point of clarification for Councilmember Krantz. Our inspectors certainly are not going to, if we've got a ladder that is leaned up against a building that is blocking a sidewalk, we are not going to write a $250 fine. We certainly have the ability to warn that homeowner or that business of, we would like you to remove that, come down, get a right-of-way permit, tell us what your sidewalk, your pedestrian plan is going to look like, if the activity is going to continue. But we certainly have.
Better things to do.
But it also safeguards against, I'll give you just one example that we've run into most recently. We had a roofing contractor that was in town, did not get a right-of-way permit, backed two very large trucks over the sidewalk and curb and gutter, a new sidewalk, into a yard, and was proceeding to fill both of those trucks with roofing. They were planning on driving those loaded trucks right back out over that sidewalk, curb and gutter. When we did go up and approach the general contractor that was doing it, they had the right-of-way permit filled out in the truck. And when we approached them, they said, oh yeah, we knew we were supposed to go get it. We were just on our way down there. And we told them that's not the way we typically do it. We would like to see what those issues are that we've got out there as far as blocking pedestrian facilities, getting vehicles actually in and out. They had to block traffic for a while to get those trucks in and would have getting them out. And they indicated to us that they were going to come down and get it. They just forgot about it. But we've run into that several different times with this contractor, that we've given them and looked the other way in the past. So this does give us the opportunity to give them that fine that will help them remember to turn in that right-of-way permit and get those things taken care of and have a plan before they actually get out there and start the work,
Absolutely.
so that we can maintain our infrastructure that is out there in the right-of-way.
Thank you.
How much is a right-of-way permit?
I believe it's $75.
I want to throw in something kind of that I'm sure won't apply, I hope. But there are alleys being blocked in this city every day, from food truck deliveries, UPS, FedEx, blah, blah, blah. That certainly doesn't apply to that, correct?
That's correct. We have never, temporary, at a very minimal time frame, temporary blockage.
Right.
We have never tried to govern any sort of delivery truck or anything like that.
Yeah, because it says here, the first line, it says, any person or entity who causes any condition or engages in an activity requiring a permit. Certainly you don't need a permit to drop off some beer somewhere.
That's correct.
All right.
At least nothing that we've ever,
Unless they go across the sidewalk. That's- Never mind.
Great.
Councilman, go ahead, Councilman.
So let's say we have a bunch of rainy weather and someone goes, thanks, man, I'd sure like, some businesses, I'd sure like to clean my gutters or clean the roof off or something, the next nice day. But the nice day is Saturday or Sunday. Can they come in and get a permit with an extended date on what they're gonna do? Or does it have to have the date that they're going to do it?
no, they can absolutely come in and apply for a permit, and we will work with those customers to get them taken care of. If they don't know when they're gonna do the activity, we certainly will look at and permit what the pedestrian traffic plan would look like, what the mitigation would be for that right-of-way permit, if they're disturbing, soils, whatever it might be. But we certainly will work with those customers to make sure that they are taken care of, and they don't have to do it within a 24-hour window. We'll certainly work with them to figure out when they're going to do that and how they're going to do it. And it really depends on what the activity is. Some activities within the right-of-way take an inspection. We have stormwater issues. Most recently, we've had a fill and grade permit that also required a right-of-way permit that came along with some other stipulations for stormwater, that they had to put up a silt fence and some other things to protect the right-of-way. So it really depends on a case-by-case basis of, do they need an inspection, and when they can actually do those activities.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Craig, can I clarify? In the code, isn't there different levels of permits? Or is that a right-of-way permit? Different
There
classes?
There are.
Okay, because
Yes.
like the lower class is only like $10 or $15, I believe.
I
depending-
don't
Okay,
know
but
the
there are,
exact-
depending on what your activity is, there is
Correct.
different classes of
Correct.
right-of-way permits.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
And
Okay.
last comment on this, sorry. A lot of this sort of obviously has some focus. The what-ifs have kind of had focus towards the downtown corridor, of course. And I believe that a lot of this is related to risk and things like that as well. So even if it's a private business doing the work, they're doing the work within the city right away. If they injure somebody with their ladder because they're flinging things off the roof or whatever, doing some repair work within our city right away and it's unapproved, that brings some risk and liability onto the city itself, correct? That's part of this.
That's a lawyer over there.
I'm looking at him.
Well, I'm going to give you the worst answer that non-lawyers hate, which is it depends. I mean, the short answer is that obviously the city has a duty to maintain its streets and public rights of way to a certain standard of safety, essentially. And if we're negligent in that duty and someone is injured as a result of that, then the city could potentially be on the hook for some of those liabilities. There's also some liability in a lot of the cities, a lot of our permitting. If we provide a permit for something that's like inherently unsafe, and then someone goes and does something and hurts themselves, sometimes you can be liable for basically not having an adequate permitting process. But I think the scenario that you're talking about, I think, is relatively rare. I mean, if we give a right-of-way permit for someone to do a project somewhere, and then while they're doing that project in the right-of-way, they cause some sort of injury or cause some sort of damage, the city would only be liable to the extent that it failed to either maintain the right-of-way in a reasonably safe condition, or we issued the permit wrongfully, which I am confident our staff would not do. Hopefully.
Thanks.
Okay.
And Mayor Rogers, I did check the fee schedule, it is $15 for the lowest.
For the class one, okay. Can we have the second reading of ordinance? Were we done with discussion? Okay, second reading of ordinance 1929-1018.
Ordinance number 1929-1018, an ordinance of the City of Shelton, Washington, amending section 12.20.140 of Shelton Municipal Code, chapter 12.20, relating to right-of-way permit violations.
Thank you, Donna. We have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 1929-1018, ordinance amending section 12.20.140 of the Shelton Municipal Code relating to right-of-way permit violations. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Next, back to Director Gregory on purchase of some property.
Mayor, council members, I'm happy to bring back to you tonight the purchase sale agreement for the 204 West Birch property. With this council giving me authority to negotiate with that property owner, we do bring back to you a purchase sale agreement for $85,000 for that property that ultimately we would be a stormwater purchase, and ultimately removing the house, turning that into some sort of community park, and opening up that creek for just furthering fish habitat and working with the tribe. We've already reached out to them also, and Mason County Conservation District with some tentative plans to get together and talk about what that would look like ultimately, and plan into the future of next spring and the removal of that structure. But I am happy to bring this back to you tonight. I certainly will answer any questions that you may have, but you will notice that the price does fall within the parameters that were given. One other thing to point out, we did within this agreement agree to pay all of the closing costs in addition to the $85,000 purchase price.
Okay. Do we have a motion on this subject?
Anybody? I move to authorize the mayor to sign the purchase and sale agreement once it is signed by the sellers and returned to the city, and authorize the city manager to make necessary budget modifications to allow for the purchase of the property.
Second. Okay, thank you. Further discussion?
I did notice an item on page 4 of the purchase and sale agreement that it appears that a reference was taken out or unable to be found. It reads, let's see here, 8.3.4, the end of the sentence says, and closing costs described in section, error reference source not found. So I think we just need to clean that up before.
Table of contents problems. Microsoft Word, it's hard.
Sorry, we will clean that up.
Piece.
catch.
One thing just to point out also, we do have a signed copy back from the seller. So just a point of clarification, we wanted to get that back before we actually brought this forward. And we do have that in hand. We got that late yesterday afternoon.
Okay.
And Craig, just for the folks in the room, can you talk real briefly about where the funding for this purchase was coming from? Because we continue to talk about the health of the different funds within the city budget. If you could speak to that just briefly.
Yeah, so that is why I pointed out this would be a storm asset ultimately, and come out of the stormwater fund. And that department, that enterprise fund, is fairly healthy. I think in reference to what we've got in the general fund, obviously not connected or tied in any way to the general fund. It's its own standalone enterprise fund, and it is fairly healthy with an end fund balance, I think, in the neighborhood of about $750,000 in 2018. So plenty of money moving forward to operate and sustain that enterprise fund.
And there is a possibility of some of that money being paid back if we had a partnership with the tribes or something, if it involved restoration or salmon recovery or something. Is there not a possibility of that?
I don't know necessarily about the sale or the purchase price of this property, but we certainly have already reached out and had discussions with the Squaxin Island Tribe, like I mentioned, and Mason Conservation District for the design of this property, of what that would actually look like for stream restoration. And they have agreed, the Squaxin Island Tribe has agreed to foot the bill for the design of that project, and also getting the Salmon Enhancement Group involved in that also to make an overall just great project moving forward.
Good.
Okay.
And we also,
Go ahead.
we also, would you maybe explain to the people here, and refresh my memory also, the amount of money that you have spent, not you personally, but we have spent trying to keep that house, I almost said afloat, but we don't want it to float. We want to keep the water out of it. And that's been very costly over the years. The city has had to pay for sandbags and labor, and so.
You were correct in your first statement also.
Okay.
Not only the city, but myself also trying to keep Kelly dry down there
Yeah.
many nights. We have been down there and spent a significant amount of city funds
Over the years.
over the years to try to help her stay dry.
Well, sooner or later, this is probably gonna, pay off.
As I indicated when we talked about this the last time, since we put the Canyon Creek bypass in, we have not had any issues over the past several years. But most recently, over the last couple of years, we have seen an increased amount of flow through Canyon Creek. And that could be for a number of different reasons: development up in the Capitol Hill area, runoff, whatever that might be. But we certainly have seen increased flows in Canyon Creek, and the overall capacity of the overflow has been right to its max a couple times over the last 2 years. So moving forward, there is certainly a possibility that we could get significant flooding down there again, and hopefully the design of that overall project will gain some capacity and hope increase capacity throughout the entire system and ultimately help downstream from there.
Anything else? All right, we have a motion and a second to authorize me to sign the purchase and sale agreement once it is signed by the sellers and returned to the city, and to authorize the city manager to make any necessary budget modifications to allow for the purchase of the property. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries.
And
Deputy
if
Mayor?
I may interject, a motion to extend the meeting by 15 minutes to allow that we complete tonight's agenda.
Second.
Second? In favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, opposed? Okay, on to administrative reports. And we told the police chief he'd be first up.
I'm the only one left. I could have done this in 3 minutes. You wouldn't have had to extend it. Makes it easier. I wanted to thank Mr. Dorsey. I didn't pay him for that endorsement earlier.
Oh,
But I
yeah.
will tell you that I did talk to Pickens tonight, and he found the purse by going back to Walmart, going through the parking lot, looking in the carts that were left out in the parking lot to find the purse. You've had requested that we do some updates to you on a monthly basis regarding code enforcement and what's going on in the world of code enforcement. Just to give you a brief overview, code enforcement was inherited from the police department about a year ago. A lot of people think code enforcement is just going out telling you to mow your lawn, pick up your garbage, do this, do that. Like the mayor, like Mr. Krantz said earlier, a lot of it involves the intent, and you're also invading on somebody's property. And as we talked earlier, as any lawyer can tell you, going onto someone's property and telling them how to take care of it can be a challenge in of itself. We spent a considerable amount of time in the last few months updating our codes, which were not updated for many years, a lot of which we discovered are outdated and unenforceable. So we've updated that. We've worked, code enforcement officers worked a lot with our city prosecutor to be able to come up with prosecutable, enforceable codes that we can go out and deal with some of these issues. And so he's been through a good amount of training in that. We did hit a road bump when we lost the in-house attorney, and we were trying to deal with some of the things there with training, but we're back on track. One of the things we will be doing also with our code enforcement is this month we have in-house training for all the police officers, because my pledge to them is you now become, by default, code enforcement officers. Figure we can't put people in jail, we'll go out and do the code enforcement. So that was a joke. So they're all going to work on the code enforcement aspect with it. It's part of our community policing tools anyways. We're going to be adopting certain neighborhoods and going out and dealing with things. With that being said, I gave you a document that has just a basic overview of what's going on this month. Citizen-generated complaints mean these are complaints that came in. Usually they'll come in either through Mark or our office, with citizens coming in complaining of code enforcement type. Self-generated, you can see that accounts for the majority of the cases. Resolved can mean anything from somebody said they have an inoperable vehicle parked in a yard, and he goes out there and contacts them, and the next thing you know, the vehicle's moved, thus it's resolved. We still do a case on it, we still have to write information about it, but it's a resolved case. It doesn't necessarily mean people got arrested, cited, or whatever. Citations, none this month, but we come up with a better citation mechanism through some updated codes with the city prosecutor. I can tell you there will be citations issued in the next month because of some of these that are in resolution process. That can mean either he sees progress and somebody's working on it, or the person basically has told us I'm not changing it. So there is some codes we have where once you receive these, it can turn into a misdemeanor. So depending on your action of trying to resolve the cases. And as you can tell, he also handles our animal complaints because he is, by default, our animal control officer as well as code enforcement and abandoned cars. And it gives you a breakdown of the numbers of what was taken care of there. I'm happy to answer any questions you got.
Questions for the chief? Right. Thank you
And
very much.
also, I'd like, if you think about this in the reports you'd like to see for the next month, I'd be happy if you want to shoot me an email or give me a call, let me know what you'd like to see in these types of reports. I'd be happy to.
And actually, if I may, and this may be a question for you, Chief, but it may be from Mark as well. If a citizen does observe some sort of activity that they believe is a violation of the code, how do they go about reporting that to have it looked at?
There's a variety of mechanisms. They can go to the website. There's forms upstairs. There's forms in the police department, or they can simply call the non-emergency number for dispatch. And they can call that non-emergency number at all hours. Believe me, I can tell you the code enforcement officer comes in the morning and there's a list of pending calls between animal complaints barking through the night to code enforcement that he'll have to go to.
Our customer service staff will fill out a form so somebody can call, give them an address, location, what their concern is. That form will be completed by customer service staff, routed through the departments, and then again, somebody from the police department can check in on it. If it's a nuisance violation, if it's a building violation or land use violation, then community development would check in on that.
Thank you.
So I think that it would be a good data point, is just the total calls for the month, in kind of the general category of what they were for. It looks like this is what was dealt with, correct? The items that were followed up on and dealt with, not just every call. So that
No,
was,
this will include.
what we have here has
Yes.
everything?
What you have
Oh.
here will include the
Sorry.
calls that came in, citizen complaints as well as self-generated. Most of what he does currently is self-generated.
Okay.
There are calls that will come in and it'll be simply a phone call and letting people know that I'm already working on this. And a lot of times that's the case, is that it's a ongoing case that's being worked on.
Okay.
And so we don't repeat those calls in here every month.
I think to follow up with the chief, I think it's important that we do receive these contacts by the public. I think sometimes the public assumes that it might be taken care of by city staff, and we just can't be everywhere at all times. And if they have a concern, to bring it to our attention, we'll deal with it right away, rather than let it manifest and become maybe a situation that becomes worse and it's harder to take care of down the road. If it's one vehicle, it's a little easier to take care of than 2 or 3 or 4 vehicles. So if the public contacts us through our normal means, we were happy to take care of it at any time.
When someone files a complaint, do they get feedback that it's resolved or it's not resolved?
Within 48 hours, that's our goal. Within 48 hours of the complaint coming in, the code enforcement officer makes contact with the complainant. To at least let him know that he's received it. And then, it may be a contact back of, hey, we're working on that when we're well aware of the situation. Is there any new information? Sometimes there's an unfounded clause in here too, or I'm sorry, an unfounded category in here, because we had one gentleman who swore up and down that it was a violation to have an inoperable vehicle in your driveway. Whether or not it was clean or not, if it didn't operate, he wanted it towed off of this guy's private property. And we had to go out and tell him, no, that's not against the code. And you talked about it with Craig earlier with some of the stuff, Mr. Krantz, and a lot of it goes with discretion and intent. And that's what we deal with a lot here.
Thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Public Works report from Director Gregory.
So just a couple of updates on the 2 major projects that we do have. You will see Pavetta Brothers Downtown Connector project will be coming to a halt here soon, within the next couple of weeks. They're going to finish up the curb work that they've got from 7th Street up to C Street. They're trying to finish up that. They're also going to finish some curb returns down on 1st Street, not necessarily getting into what will eventually be the roundabout, but more of the curb and gutter on the outer portions of that. At that point, they will be shutting down for the winter, returning in early spring to finish up that project. But really just some curb work that they have left to do before they do exit the city for a short period of time. With the Sewer Basin 3 project, they will be continuing through the winter. Right now, they are down in the 2nd and Birch area. That is the final connection that they need to do before they go back up onto Northcliffe and actually connect that in for the Northcliffe development area and that sewage flow to go downtown, which will also open up the Tall Timbers area, the small development on the right-hand side as you're going up the hill that is ultimately in the county, but we do provide service to that development. We have had quite a few customers that have been waiting for sewer connections so that they could start building in that area. So we're hoping by the first of the year that we get that connected and get them so that they can get a building permit through the county and start their projects. One thing just to note, we've had quite a few complaints of the dewatering system that is down there placed in that location. That is taking groundwater out of that, and it has to run continuously. So basically, that pump runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If they shut it off, it has to be turned back on later, and it takes quite a significant amount of time to catch back up with the groundwater before they can actually start working again. So quite a few complaints for noise ordinance. We do, through the Shelton Municipal Code, have a provision in there that allows the city of Shelton for certain activities. It lists off things like fireworks shows, community events, and any city infrastructure or road project that does give us the ability to create that noise outside of those time limits. We have taken quite a few precautions down in that area. We have surrounded that pump with hay bales, a significant amount of hay bales at the contractor's expense to surround that entire pump. And also, they worked on quieting the exhaust system also. So we have certainly improved the situation down there, but that will continue and is slated to be in use for at least the next month. So I'm guessing that those complaints will slow down somewhat, but certainly the property owners that are right adjacent to that, I'm guessing will continue to complain. So just wanted to make you aware of the situation that we do have down in that area. Just the last thing to bring before you tonight, something that you will see in the future. We're not looking for any action, but I did give you a handout. Sorry for the color on that handout. It's not very good. But on the first page, you will see this is the McDonald's area. So at the bottom center of your page, I guess the only building there with just a partial white roof, the rest of it's darkened out, that is McDonald's, the old McDonald's. And if you'll remember up there in that area heading south to K Street, you have 2 lanes. Ultimately, it's a drop lane that turns into a turn lane at K Street. We call it a drop lane because ultimately it's going away. The next block up, it turns into on-street parking. It's considered a drop lane at that point, and turns into just a turn lane. We have worked with our traffic engineer, Rick Perez, for a significant amount of time. Early concept for a bus pullout in that location. MTA does stop there every hour and does an in-lane stop. So basically they pull up to that location in that outside lane, stop there for about 5 to 7 minutes while they pick up any of their riders or drop off in that location. They do have a bus stop location in that block. But working with MTA, the first concept was our property line goes back to about where that tree line is at in the photo. We looked at a much larger project with MTA. They agreed to pay for the improvements. But ultimately, looking at that, it was going to be very difficult to get an actual pull-off that would move far enough off of the roadway. It would affect some of the landscaping of some of those mature trees that are out there in that location now. It wouldn't provide much of an area for an actual bus shelter. So ultimately what we came up with at the staff level was to actually make that drop lane terminated at the north entrance to that, what's McDonald's, and back into Les Schwab, but terminate that turn lane there. Push that traffic over much earlier on before they actually get to K Street, and then basically stripe within that outside lane an actual bus pullout. This concept does meet all of our current design standards for a bus pullout. It's the same configuration. The only difference is instead of using concrete and curbing sidewalks, and moving that, we're using striping with paint. And ultimately, if we have issues with motorists, the motoring public not abiding by that, we'll put some candlesticks out there. But right now, we're going to just rely on the actual striping of that. So initially, that just right by the north entrance will be hash marked out, and then it will dip into the actual bus pullout with some very large diamonds within that area, and then that bus will pull back out into that lane of travel. Ultimately, I think it increases safety. Right now, you've got folks that are either coming out of the south entrance and crossing basically 3 lanes of travel, so 2 southbound and that suicide turn lane that we've got. And also entering into the actual south entrance, folks will be able to pull up into that turn lane and only have to turn cross traffic over 1 lane of traffic instead of 2, making it much safer. And then adding some on-street parking that block between the south entrance to McDonald's and K Street. We've got a new business up in that area, and creating some on-street parking, I certainly think would be a benefit also. We've done a traffic count up in that area, traffic count that was done over the last couple of weeks showed that we had an average of around 16 cars per hour in that turn lane. That doesn't mean that those cars are always turning. We went up and did a visual, and we do have quite a few of the motoring public that like to use that for a passing lane on the inside right, that try to skirt traffic and actually make it through that if there's no on-street parking or cars on the next block up. So they like to use that as an acceleration lane. But ultimately, there were traffic counts for a week done, and through that, we found that the average was 16 cars per hour, or per day, per hour that would go through that lane.
Well, that's a lot of cars in an hour.
It's
No.
not that many. You think
Guess I
about
don't
it
get 'em.
overall in a day, it's not very many.
Craig, just a quick question. On the
Sure.
north entrance to the McDonald's, are they gonna improve the?
Yes.
Okay, because that is,
Already tore up.
Yes.
yeah, okay.
And by the contractor, not by the city. We do not own
No, I
that
understand
entrance.
that, but if you're gonna
We-
put
we
more
get-
traffic through that,
We get calls on it all the time, asking why we don't fix it. It is not ours, but yes, they are going to
Thank
fix
you.
it with the
Okay.
project.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
But I would certainly be happy to answer any questions that you might have on this current project. You'll see this, we really want to get this done before the McDonald's project actually finishes. So you should see this in the next couple of weeks, if we get a couple of dry days to actually go out and do it.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
And we'll make sure it's out in public.
Absolutely,
when do
we will
that.
give plenty of notice. Actually, the warning signs are already out there in bags, so
Okay.
we'll certainly give plenty of notice to the public. And ultimately, MTA is going to put up a bus shelter. They've already contacted McDonald's to locate that on the grass strip just behind the sidewalk, and they've okayed that and signed off on it also.
Okay, thank you, Craig.
You're welcome.
Mayor Rogers, I have to remind you that we have only 3 minutes left.
Well,
and He
I was-
looks long-winded to me over there, so
I was
I don't
gonna
know.
ask Mike, should we extend the meeting a few more minutes?
I can do it very quickly.
You okay with that, or?
Yes, I'm fine.
All right.
So just a couple updates. One, the city manager process. Last week, you, in executive session, you approved to move forward with 5 final candidates and to move into the second stage of background evaluation. I talked with Bob Slavin, the city's consultant on this project today. We're moving forward. All 5 are still in the process. We haven't had anybody back out, so that's a good thing.
That's good.
The background work is, he's hopeful it'll be done by the end of this week. And we're looking at scheduling interviews on the 29th and 30th of November. I think, I don't have my calendar right in front of me, but I think that's Thursday and Friday. So that process is moving forward. I'm very pleased with the quality of the candidates that you'll be interviewing. So, second of all, I think you met, actually I have 3 things. You met Pam Ward at the public disclosure training last week. Pam was the longtime Human Resources Manager for the Public Utility District here, and she has agreed to come in on a part-time basis as our interim Human Resources Director. I'm very pleased to have Pam on board. And the last thing I wanted to update you on is that I've also been in touch with a fellow by the name of Mike Bailey. Mike currently works for Municipal Research and Services Center, MRSC, for those of us in the biz. Mike is a financial consultant for them. He's recently retired from the city of Redmond, Prior to that, he started his career in Linwood, has been in Renton. He's a former president of the Washington Finance Officers Association, been very heavily involved in the National Government Finance Officers Association, and I've asked Mike to come in and do a fairly high-level assessment of our finance department. Because one of the things that I'm concerned about is that when we do get around to recruiting and hiring a finance director, I want that person to have a roadmap to know what areas of weakness, what areas of strengths, what things do we need to focus on first and foremost to reinvent our finance department to be as top-notch as we can possibly make it. So Mike will be starting his work here at the end of November.
Okay.
So,
Thank you, Mike.
That's all I have. Did I make
Okay.
it?
Any questions for Mike? Quick questions
You
for
got a
Mike?
minute left.
A minute left.
All right. Do we have any other topics to discuss at this point? Okay. Our next regular meeting will be Tuesday, November 20th at 6 p.m. We are adjourned.
Congratulations.
Thank you.